Hi everyone, we are on this new series, The Unexpected, and I am sure for every one of us here who's joining us online that you would say that the past 2 years were quite unexpected, and I'm pretty sure that no one saw that we were going to be facing a pandemic. And though we may not have expected the past 2 years to pan out like this month we find ourselves in the season of Christmas where we can most definitely expect the following to happen. It's always on December 25th. Unlike Easter and Chinese New Year, where we're trying to figure out what day it falls in, so we're always looking at our calendar. There are always decorations involved. It's a season of giving gifts, food, and gatherings with friends and family, and you will most definitely hear Christmas songs in the form of Mariah Carey and Michael Bublé. Now, this is the modern day Christmas influenced by years of culture and tradition, but what about the original Christmas, the birth of Jesus? There were a lot of unexpected things revolving around the birth of Jesus. It was an unexpected situation for his parents, Joseph and Mary. It brought about an unexpected response from different groups of people like King Herod and the wise men. And we see that Jesus ended up being situated in the most unexpected place. And today, I want to look at the unexpected women that Matthew chose to include in his genealogy. So here's something for us to think about. How many of us here are aware of our family's genealogy? So the little info that I do have about my family is that both grandfathers, they immigrated from China to Malaysia, and they ended up settling down in Malaysia and getting married there. One was a cobbler, another was a carpenter, very humble beginnings. Both had huge families. So on my dad's side, there's 9 kids. On my mom's side, there's 8 kids. So family reunions are huge. On my dad's side, family is scattered all over the world, and we have like different people from different backgrounds. I've got a Finnish cousin, I've got Filipino, Japanese, British, and there are some members of my family, cousins, kids I have not met yet. And then on my mom's side, everyone is situated in Malaysia. And Chinese New Year reunions, that's when I meet people who I didn't know I would be related to. So every Chinese New Year, normally if we do go back to Malaysia, we will be at my grand aunt's house, and that's where all the families come and visit. Like everyone from all over come over and visit. And it's at these reunions where I meet people that I don't expect to be related to, and I learn random facts like how my great-grandmother owned a durian plantation, or how there's someone in the family who is a badminton legend in Malaysia. Now, my cousin on my dad's side is trying to keep track of everyone by drawing out charts. So hopefully that's something that we can keep going for the years to come and keep track of the Lin dynasty. Anyways, it's always fun to hear stories about my family, and it's always fun to learn fun facts about them. And sometimes you can learn a lot about who a person is from their family background. So if we look at the Gospel of Matthew right from the get-go, Matthew introduces and establishes who Jesus is with a genealogy. In Matthew 1:1, it says that the book of genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Now, by mapping out the genealogy of Jesus, he's addressing the question of how Jesus fulfills the prophecy of being the Messiah and establishes who Jesus is. That he's a descendant of Abraham, he is Jewish from the tribe of Judah, and he is a descendant of David, that he is from royalty. Now with genealogies, normally only men's names are included, like only the male line is traced. And biblically, it was the father who determined both national and tribal identity. And women, they were only added if they would ensure the purity of the line or enhance the dignity. And if they were ever mentioned, it's only in passing. Now, the Gospel of Matthew is written primarily for a Jewish audience, and his genealogy isn't even complete. Like, he's left out a couple of names. But on the other hand, he unexpectedly chooses to include women in his genealogy. And the women that he includes are the following. We see this in Matthew 1:3, Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar. In Matthew 1:5, Salmon, the father of Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz, the father of Obed by Ruth. And then in Matthew 1:6, David was the father of Solomon by the wife of Uriah, which I believe he's referring to Bathsheba here. And Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called Christ. And we see that in Matthew 1:16. Now, if we were to take a deeper look at this woman, Tamar, she posed as a prostitute. Rahab was an actual prostitute. Ruth was a widow from Moab, which was considered a pagan nation. Bathsheba, basically another man's wife who was involved in adultery, and in her case, most likely a victim. And then you have Mary, pregnant before birth, and therefore would be regarded by most as sexually immoral. So if Matthew was going to be including women in the genealogy, the original audience might be expecting him to feature the Jewish matriarchs like Eve, Sarah, and Rebecca. But with the exception of Mary, Matthew chose to include women who were Gentiles, considered outsiders, and they were also associated with the scandal of sexual ambiguity. Now, these were very unexpected women to be included in a genealogy. I mean, why were they featured? It's possible that Matthew chose to feature them because they had a huge desire to be part of God's family, to embrace the faith. They were resilient and they took the initiative to continue the line of God's people despite facing less than ideal circumstances. And we see how the faith and resilience of these women had a huge part to play in the birth of Jesus Christ. Now, like I said, with the genealogy, it's supposed to establish who Jesus is. And so we see that from this genealogy that the Son of God born of a woman, that Jesus Christ is the Son of God born of a woman. Now, Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, they all had the word by before their names in the genealogy. And in other Bible translations, the phrase whose mother was is used. Now, these weren't just random women, but mothers who had a part to play in making the lineage happen. If we were to look at the Greek word used for the word by, it's the word ek. Now, ek is a primary preposition denoting origin, like the point from where action or motion proceeds. It describes from, the word, it means from, out of a place, time, or cause. Basically, it can be used either literally or figuratively. So, for example, if we replace the word by with the word ek, so ek, Tamar, or ek, Rahab, basically it indicates that these women are the origin which the children come from. But it's also interesting to note that Matthew 1:16 reads a little bit differently. If I were to read Matthew 1:16 again, it says, Jacob the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called Christ. Now, in this verse, the Greek word ek is the same as of. So if we were to follow the same sentence structure as the rest of the genealogy, it would be like so. It should read, Joseph, the father of Jesus by Mary. But we know that Joseph, he's the adopted father of Jesus, so that sentence does not make sense. Now, as mentioned earlier, one receives their national and tribal identity from their father. But since Joseph is only the adopted father, then where does Jesus get his Jewish heritage? He gets it through his mother, Mary. And therefore, this fulfills the prophecy that Jesus is a Jew. Now, Jesus gets his humanity through Mary, but what about his divinity? What about being the Son of God? In Matthew 1:20, the angel of the Lord appears to Joseph and says this to Joseph. He says, Joseph, son of David, do not fear to take Mary as your wife, for that which is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. So the Greek word for the word from here is also the same as is the Greek word ek, thus showing that Jesus is the Son of God. So here we see that Jesus is the Son of God, born of a woman, completely human, and completely divine. Now we also see that Jesus is the Son of God from the line of resilient women. Now, the women highlighted in Matthew's genealogy may have tainted reputations, they are marked by sexual scandal and shame, and for some of them, they are straight up sexually exploited by men. And they probably had to deal with contempt, rejection, pain. Yet despite all this, their desire to be part of God's family, their desire to embrace the faith takes precedence. And we see them take risks to continue and preserve the line of God's people. In the midst of facing a series of what if situations, they choose to be resilient. Now let's take a look at Tamar, who is the first woman mentioned in the genealogy. Now, Tamar, she's married to Judah. She was married to Judah's firstborn heir, who was wicked in the sight of the Lord and was put to death. And then she married Onan, the second son, and the same thing happened. He was evil, in the sight of the Lord and was put to death. So here you have Tamar, who was once a new bride, and now she is a widow twice. Now she's supposed to marry the third son, Shelah, Judah's youngest, but that doesn't happen, and she finds herself in a tough situation. Judah's wife passes away, and at this point, it doesn't seem like the line of Judah is going to continue. So what does Tamar do? She takes matters into her own hands and deceives Judah into having sexual intercourse with her by pretending to be a prostitute. She conceives, and the line of Judah continues. Her actions were dangerous. I mean, like, if you think about it, what if her tactics didn't work? But however, her actions were within the law. And in fact, Tamar, she never received judgment for her actions. She was in fact deemed righteous in this whole situation. So you've got Tamar, who pretended to be a prostitute. Then we've got Rahab, who was an actual prostitute, and she was living in Jericho. Now, she takes a risk to hide the two spies, and she lied to the king when he was looking for them. I mean, what if she got made? Like, what if the king found out that she was lying? I mean, probably the king would have, killed her and her entire family. And Rahab declares God is sovereign based off the little knowledge that she knows. Let me just read from Joshua 2, verses 9 to 11. Rahab says this, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you devoted to destruction. And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, He is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. So again, she just declares who God is, like that He's sovereign, and she was willing to join a new family, the family of God, and through her actions, Jericho falls. Rahab and her family, they survived, they were preserved, and they were incorporated among the Jewish people. I mean, think about it. This woman, again, chooses to be, in the face of, like all this happening, with Jericho falling, she chooses to be resilient. She chooses to place her faith in the God she only has heard of a little bit. And there we are, that she, is incorporated among the Jewish people. And eventually we see that she becomes the great-great-grandmother of David. Now, next woman I want to talk about is Ruth. Now, her story seems pretty PG compared to the first two women, but her background is a cause of controversy because she is a member of a pagan nation, a descendant of Moab. Now, Moab was the son of incest between Lot and his daughter, so her background is not good. In fact, in Deuteronomy 23:3, it says, "No Ammonite or Moabite may enter the assembly of the Lord, even to the 10th generation. None of them may enter the assembly of the Lord forever." So not only was she is she a Moabite, she is a widow. So she's kind of like the bottom of the barrel right about now. She chooses to go to Bethlehem with Naomi. She is bending her roots and she's embracing God as her God. I mean, Ruth said this to Naomi. We see this in Ruth chapter 1, verse 16 to 17. She says, "Do not urge me or to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." We see Ruth having such a huge desire to be embracing the faith and to follow after God. And Ruth, despite being in a foreign land, she did what she could to provide for Naomi, for herself, by gleaning in the field. And in a way, she's potentially exposing herself to abuse. I mean, she's a young Moabite widow in the fields, surrounded by men. I mean, and women. She could, be abused by these, whether it be verbal, physical, or whatnot. But little does she know that the field that she's gleaning in belongs to that of Boaz, a distant relative. And Boaz wasn't just some relative, he was a kinsman redeemer. And under Jewish law, a kinsman redeemer is a close relative responsible for rescuing and restoring a childless widow through marriage. Now, Naomi, she knows of this, and so she instructs Ruth to go to the threshing floor at night to uncover Boaz's feet and await instructions. So if you were to think about it, what if Ruth did all that and was rejected? I mean, Boaz could be like, what is this woman doing at my feet, and rejects her, this is kind of, dicey to have a woman come to me at night and cover my feet and wait there. Like, what is that? So what if Ruth got rejected? But we know at the end of the day, Boaz, he redeems her, and she eventually becomes the great-grandmother of David the king. Now, David the king, we all know he's the king, and we know that one woman who is so associated with him is Bathsheba. Now, in Matthew's genealogy, she is listed as the wife of Uriah. Her name isn't even used. It's almost like Matthew wanted his readers to remember that she was another man's wife, to remember that this whole situation, there was the sin of adultery attached to her. So Bathsheba, she was just bathing on the roof, going through, ritual cleansing, and she caught David's eye. She wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. She wasn't there on the roof trying to seduce David. She just happened to be doing what she normally does. And then she caught David's eye, and David sent for her and slept with her. Now, during that time in the culture that she was living in, she was not in a place to reject David's advances. I mean, David, he is a powerful man, and I don't think you can say no to a king when he sends for you during that time. And she was pretty passive in this entire encounter, except for when she sent word to inform David that she was pregnant. Now, David, he murdered her husband to cover up the affair and then took her to be his wife. He brought shame to her, and as a consequence of this sin, their son becomes sick and passes away. David's eventually repentant, and eventually they have another son, Solomon, who ends up being David's chosen heir and a precursor of the Christ to come. Now, like I mentioned, right, she was someone who was pretty passive in her entire encounter with David. But in the later years as queen mother, she spoke up and used her influential voice to secure the succession of Solomon. I mean, it is a very risky step to take, especially when another son had already claimed the throne. Like, what if she got found out by the son? Like, oh, you've got someone trying to, start mutiny and, take my throne. She and Solomon could have been killed. Here you have Bathsheba. She has the sin of, adultery attached to her. She's, potentially dealing with the contempt of being seen as the other woman. And, maybe people don't take her seriously, but yet she takes that step and tries to, remind David of his promise that, hey, Solomon's supposed to take your throne, take your place. And so we see at the end of the day that it all works out. Solomon becomes king and the Davidic line continues. Now we want to talk about Mary, the final woman in the genealogy. She was betrothed to Joseph, and betrothal normally lasts a year. And it's a serious contract between families, not just man and woman. Now, during this period of time, both are watched pretty closely, and they both know the penalties of sexual misconduct. In Luke's gospel, we see that during her time of betrothal, the angel Gabriel was sent from God to let her know that she will conceive a child. In Luke 1:38, it says, we see her response, when she says, "Behold, I am the servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word." So she responded in obedience. She said, yes, I'll do this. It's not like one day she woke up and surprised, oh, I'm pregnant. It's not that. She said yes, and she knew what she was getting herself into. Again, think about the situation. What if she said, no thanks. I don't want to deal with this, stigma. I don't want to deal with this, situation here. I'm good. No thanks. But she responded in obedience. So of course people are going to talk, assume that she was immoral. I mean, people would not believe that you are a virgin and then you have a kid. People are not going to believe that. So she is most definitely aware of the perceived judgment that is coming her way. And just imagine that she knows that she has to deal with this for 9 months straight. Being pregnant, with a child and dealing with judgment and contempt. She is aware of that, but yet she still said yes to all of that. Now, out of all the women mentioned in the genealogy, she appears to be the only one who had a direct interaction with the Lord. And maybe this is an indication of how important her role is. I mean, I don't know, maybe it is. like through her faith and obedience, we see that the birth of Jesus comes about. Now, these women, they were unexpected features in the genealogy because of their gender and their background. And with these names, it's so easy to focus on their imperfection. It's so easy to just talk about the sin and the shame associated with them. But let's take a moment right now to focus on their resilience. One might have expected them to succumb to their circumstances, to succumb to shame, but through their unexpected resilience, they took risks. They paid a price. They made sacrifices. They chose to be available. And we see that through all of that, the line of God's people continue. And the prophecy of David coming from a Davidic line is fulfilled. We see such a hunger in their heart to be part of God's family. God, he always honors the desire to be part of his family. He will never turn people away. It's not like if someone says, I want to be part of the family of God, God would never say, nope, not good enough, please don't come. He's like, you want to be part of my family? Please, yes, let's go. You are welcome to my family. And that is exactly the whole reason why Jesus sent Jesus in the first place, the whole reason of why we have Christmas, that Jesus came to be with us. His name means God with us. And he chose to be with us and to reconcile us back to God. So we see how God just used all these different women to be part of this history, the genealogy, the lineage of Jesus. And I want to let you know that we are all part of his story. Now, looking at these women again, in the face of judgment, condemnation, hardship, rejection, these unexpected women were recognized for their faith. They experienced God's favor and they were grafted into his family. And through these women, we see how God can move in unusual ways, using unexpected people in less than ideal situations to bring his promise to fulfillment. Basically, we see the birth of Christ come about. And honestly, I don't think these women envisioned the part that they were going to play, the multitudes of people that they would inspire in the future. For example, when Tamar was playing the prostitute, I do not think she had in mind my actions is going to be looked upon as righteous. When Rahab was, protecting the spies, and she might be thinking what about the people of Jericho? They're going to see me as that woman who betrayed them. Or Bathsheba, when she, committed adultery with David, she's not going to think oh my goodness, I'm going to be inspiring the generations to come. But these women were so beautifully, intricately woven into the genealogy of Jesus. And, in a way, Matthew was preaching the gospel through the genealogy. He basically talked about why Jesus came, right? Showed why Jesus came for all people, Jews and Gentiles, males and females. And through this genealogy, we see how God shows his grace and mercy, and he can use anyone for his great purposes. All of us here have different stories, and we're all from different backgrounds. And maybe there are aspects of the stories of the 5 women that we may relate to. Maybe we were sexually exploited by someone. Maybe, we did something that we're not proud of. Maybe our background was just we're just not proud of it. And think about this. Perhaps we are the unexpected and unlikely people who could be used to forward God's divine purposes. Maybe we have found ourselves, in unexpected situations where God can use us. And maybe we're the unexpected people in our families who came to Christ. Like my mom, on my mom's side of the family, she is the only Christian. And I don't think the family ever expected her to become a Christian because they come from they have Taoism, they're Taoists. And so my mom was the first one in the family to come to Christ. And, none of them are still Christian yet. And we're still praying, hoping that they'll come to the Lord one day. And for me, I'm inspired by my mother's faith. She is a woman of faith, a woman who stands up for people. And, every time when I see her go into the room with her Bible, I know it's her time with Jesus. And just to see how she prays and just pursues the Lord is such an inspiration to my faith as well. And in a way, it was a start, planted a seed of my love for the Word as well. And, for some of us here, maybe your lives had an unexpected turn where God showed up. And I was just thinking about my life as well. Yes, this past 2 years have been really unexpected, and I've just found myself in unexpected situations. But throughout my life, I feel like I have had my life is a series of unexpected turns where I ended up for college, where I ended up working. Honestly, I don't think I've ever envisioned myself to be ever doing ministry at church. I mean, to be honest, being at church, doing church ministry was not one of the list of career options I had in my life. And I remember my first step into ministry was being asked to lead youth ministry. And I remember thinking to myself, I am the most unlikely person you would want to use to lead youth. I mean, youth ministry was an awkward part of my life. There are other people you would expect to be a better leader to this, and yet at that time I felt like, you know what? If I said no to this, I felt like I was losing out on an opportunity in life. And I told God, I want to serve him however I can. And if this was a position where I could serve God, then why not? Why not? And so I said yes, and it's been such a journey, and I think I am in the right place in my life. And I'm just thankful for what God has done in my life and how he has used me, this unexpected person, in his story, in ICA, in his ministry. And honestly, I'm only here part of God's story, and everything is made only possible because of what Jesus has done in my life. Now, the genealogy doesn't end where Matthew left off. I mean, because of Jesus, we are grafted into the family of God. We are all part of the genealogy, part of God's growing family. If you think about it, try subbing your name. It could be, like, for example, like if I were to sub my name into the genealogy, it would be, Daniel is the father of Petrina by son. And, just to know that it keeps going on because, Jesus, he's just, his family just extends, beyond. And so that's the beautiful thing of it is that the whole idea of why with Christmas, Jesus came to be with us, to include us into his family. So I want to encourage you in this Christmas season, you're not alone. You're not alone. You're a part of God's family. And I want to encourage you to expect Jesus to do the unexpected, to use the unexpected situations in our lives. So let's be resilient and have faith and know that we have a good God who is for us and who is with us. Let me pray with you. Father, we just thank you so much for the season of Christmas that we're here to celebrate the birth of Jesus. And we thank you. It's such a beautiful story of just all these different unexpected things that happen to come about the birth of Jesus. And we thank you that we are also unexpected people in your family, that, we have all come from different backgrounds, different pasts, different personalities. But Lord, you have a plan for us. And so, Jesus, we may not know what plan we may not know how you're going to use us, but we can expect you, that you are a good God, that you're with us, and that you have a place for us in your family. And today we choose to be resilient no matter the circumstances. And we know that when we have faith in you, that we can have hope in you because you are there with us. So we just thank you for every single person, God, and how we have such a big part to play in your story. In Jesus' name we pray.
Sing, "Oh come, let us adore him."